Back in this thing. Okay. Let's see what we have here. Master your emotional responses. Starts out with a quote from Sun Tzu. A sovereign should never launch an army out of anger. A leader should never start a war out of wrath. Angry people usually end up looking ridiculous, for their response seems out of proportion to what occasioned it. They have taken things too seriously, exaggerating the hurt or insult that has been done to them. They are so sensitive to slight that it becomes comical how they take it personally. More comical still is their belief that their outburst signifies power. The truth is the opposite. Petulance is not power. It is a sign of helplessness. People may temporarily be cowed by your tantrums, but in the end, they lose respect for you. They also realize they can easily undermine a person with so little self-control. Daily law. Displaying anger and emotion are signs of weakness. You cannot control yourself, so how can you control anything? 48 Laws of Power. Law 39, stir up waters to catch fish. That's what that's from. Interesting. Self-control. Yeah, that's what that one is about. Master your emotional response. I've noticed that recently. Probably within the last, I don't know, I would say maybe in the last, let's just make it a big estimate. Let's say within the last 10 years, I've noticed, and especially I've noticed this in the younger generation. The younger generation tends to, I think they tend to view the world through the prism of their emotions, I think is the best way to put it. And I notice this with how they talk. Because whenever I give somebody I guess you could say an opinion. When I give an opinion, I always tell them what I think. And that's how I verbalize what it is. Like if somebody asks me, for an opinion, I always tell them, well, I don't know, I just think, and then I give the opinion or whatever the topic is. But I notice, and again, this is a lot of, this happens a lot with the younger generation. If you were to ask them their opinion, they wouldn't use the phrase, I think. They use the phrase, I feel. I notice that a lot. I catch it all the time. I hear people saying a lot, I don't know, I just feel like, and then they'll give an opinion. I just feel like whatever the topic is. And I never use that phrase. Because if somebody asks for my opinion, I think about it. I think about what my position is on that topic or subject or whatever. I don't feel my way to the opinion. I think my way to the opinion. And I notice that a lot. And I always thought I was pretty curious when I first started catching on to that. Some of the books that I've read, it's like emotional reactivity is it can be dangerous. Because if you think about it, all crimes of passion are committed out of emotional outrage and triggers and extreme emotional outbursts, or that's what happens. If that person was thinking, they probably wouldn't have done what they did. All the worst behaviors of humans tend to be emotional based. That's what makes sense to me, anyways. And it seems like a lot of all the social media kind of clickbait, rage porn type stuff. It's all meant to trigger an emotion. They don't want you thinking too much. Seems like. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I even had a conversation with somebody about that. And it was funny because I'd explained it just like I did right now. And they were going to say something to kind of counter it. And they did it. They were like, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like, and then I was like, see, you just did it right there. You didn't tell me what you did. You weren't about to tell me what you think. You were about to tell me how you feel. I thought that was funny. So yeah. Another day at work. Here we go. Okay. Merge into my lane. I saw this. It was a video or a clip from an older video in a video that I was watching, and it was of Bill Cooper, and he was saying something about that. Like, they don't want you thinking too much, because if you think too much, you might start to catch on what quote unquote they are up to, and they don't want you catching on to that. That's why they keep you in a swirl of emotions. That's the whole idea behind like Hollywood and the magic of Hollywood. All those movies are really to keep your mind from thinking, and your feelings are simultaneously being like engaged through the music and the storyline, the plot, the excitement, or the drama. That's why I like those two masks that represent, that they use for like the performing arts, is like a laughing looking mask and a crying mask. Those are expressions of emotion. That's just something to think about. I guess from that perspective, if you're constantly being entertained, quote unquote, you're constantly having your emotions, pretty much you're being led around. You're being, how would I say that? Like through the entertainment industry, you're intentionally being engaged emotionally. And if you're constantly reacting emotionally, you're never really the master of the emotion. Because you're being led. You're being led to feel that emotion by like the score of the movie or the scene in the movie. If you're being led, you're not the leader. And leaders are normally considered the one in control. That's what makes sense to me, anyways. So then the question becomes, why wouldn't they want you to master your emotions? And the answer that just came to me was if you are a master of your emotions, then they can't engage you in that way and keep you reactive in that way. And if you're not wasting energy being reactive on emotions, that leaves you energy for thinking. Again, which is what they don't want you to do. It's interesting too, because so there's so many people that get emotional over things that have really, it's very inconsequential when it comes to their individual personal life. There's people that actually get like upset that their team lost the game or something. It's like, or like celebrity drama. Like a celebrity couple, somebody cheats on somebody else. You see people actually, how dare he did that to her, or how dare she, whatever. I've seen people would do that. Like they get emotionally amped up over circumstances that are happening to celebrity couples that have nothing to do with your life. Same thing with like politics on the news and all that. All that's meant to keep you emotionally triggered. And I guess emotions are the best way to get people to identify with the group. That's how I became vegan. I became overly emotional to what was going on with animals in the world. So that caused me to have like a radical reconstruction of my life. So it's a very powerful motivator. Emotions are. I wonder if this little microphone would catch me better if I put it over here on the side. I'll have to try that next time. I think that was actually one of the chapters in my book, the 33 Strategies of War, when it talks about what was that chapter? It was talking about like demagogues and how they are able to get a whole nation to follow them. Somebody like a Hitler or like a Stalin with their oratory skills. They're able to conjure up like such strong emotional reactions from their people that you can get whole large groups of people to do irrational things. It's funny. It kind of ties in with that episode of Tucker Carlson where he was talking with this guy about the structure of church and how much of a business it really is. And if you think about it, like what they're really preying on is everybody's like fear of death. Fear is a very strong motivational emotion. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Well, I guess we just lived through that, like the whole fear of death thing with the pandemic. I mean, a whole bunch of people went and got a shot, basically out of fear. And if it wasn't like fear of dying, it was like, companies were firing people. You're afraid to lose your job. Help motivated people to do something that they wouldn't have normally done. That's pretty scary, to be honest. Because like now the people who did this, because in my world this was a whole big grand strategy type of plan. So now they have very real world actionable data on how many people are moved by emotion. And who's willing to do what. Yeah, they got a whole lot of information on us. I mean, I guess from their perspective, right? They want the reason they want you emotional is because they don't want people. There'd be more people like me, to be honest. They don't want people thinking about what it is they're doing and why it is they might be doing it. So those are my thoughts for the morning. Other than that, I woke up from a bad dream. I was driving and somebody made a lane change into me. And it wasn't. I guess maybe it wasn't so much a lane change. It's like two lanes. One lane ends, so it like converges into the one next to it. I was just driving my pace, like normal speed. I wasn't driving wild, and they were like in the lane that was ending. No, which how to go? No, actually, I don't even think that's how it went because they were on my driver's side. So normally the lanes that end are on the passenger side. I think I'm misremembering that because they rubbed into me from the driver's side. At least the roads I travel, that's how it normally goes. If the lane ends, it's normally from like one of the slower lanes, the slow lane that's ending. And that is on the passenger side. I remember the color. It was like a cobalt blue car. But the funny thing is, like once they like rubbed into me, it felt like one of my tires went flat. But then all of a sudden, like the dream morphed into like I wasn't even in a car. I was on a bike. The whole thing made no sense. It was kind of weird. Oh, and then super strange. As I was leaving the house this morning, gathered all my stuff. I packed my backpack full of everything. And normally I set it down near the front door. I set my shoes right there next to my backpack. And then I go and I tell my woman goodbye. I give her a key. I lay all over her. And then I give her a little bit of love before I leave. And I say goodbye to our little dog. So as I'm doing this, I heard a sound in the living room. It sounded like a door opening. And in my head, I'm like, is that like somebody next door leaving? I'm like, why am I hearing this so clearly? And when I went, after I was finished saying goodbye, stepped over into the living room. The front door was cracked open. I'm like, what the heck? It was open by probably about a foot and a half open. Like, how did this happen? It's crazy. And I know I've gone to leave in the morning sometimes. And maybe my woman, I think maybe will go and walk the dog. And there's been times where she hasn't locked the front door, but the door has been completely shut. So I think maybe that might have been, that's my only guess as to what might have happened. But as I'm leaving, because I reshut the door and then I went and told her, I'm like, the front door opened on its own. And she's like, talk to God. Which I always do. Everything and every day, it's like, in Jesus' name I pray, amen. Before I leave the house, before I leave the parking structure to jump on, to leave to go to work. And even before work, after work, when I'm coming home, I'm always saying prayers before I jump into any kind of action. So that's not an issue. But I think that's just what happened. Maybe she just came from walking the dog and didn't completely shut the door and just maybe forgot to lock it. But again, after I was leaving, when I went to leave, I'm like, maybe there was like maybe there's a breeze outside. Just kind of a little bit of wind might have just pushed it open. And I know that door doesn't really close well if you don't like really close it. Because it's got like this, it's a new door that they installed. It's got like this little line of rubber all around the door frame. Just to like keep a nice seal and not let any kind of draft in. If you really don't like push on it when you close it, it'll look like it's closed, but like the door latch won't engage. The doorknob, deadbolt, whatever that is. So I think that's just what happened, but I thought that was pretty creepy. It seemed like if that happened in the morning, right when I was about to leave, that probably could have happened at any time during the night. Then I was thinking too, like, as I make these videos, there can't be anything in the background that's copywritten in terms of like music. Because I guess they own the rights, so I don't even know why exactly that is. Meaning, like, if I happen to make money off these videos, like, they should be getting part of it too, because technically maybe their music was part of why. I don't know. Anyways. But I was thinking, does that kind of like, what if I wanted to voluntarily promote a product in my video? How does that work? Because I know a lot of people promote products, but I'm assuming like maybe these people, the companies approach them and they have some sort of deal to promote the product, so that's why they'll do a little read for it. What if I wanted to do that on my own? Right, what if there's like an energy drink that I like a lot that I just discovered and I want to voluntarily promote it? Am I allowed to do that? So many questions, so little answers. Actually, I could probably ask AI. Really, there's no reason to have an answer to a question nowadays. See, but that goes back to being emotional. You're not going to have the right question if you're not thinking about things. Right? You can't form a question from an emotion. That doesn't seem right. You have to form a question out of contemplative thought. You can't have a contemplative emotion. That doesn't seem like those two things go together. Yeah, because the question is like a request for information. You're trying to bring information in. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, what seems to be accurate is that emotions are outwardly expressive. They come from the inside out. They can be triggered by something outside coming in. But the emotion itself ends with an outward expression. There is no input requested with an outwardly expressed emotion. That's what makes sense to me. Oh, the lane. It's not changing. It's funny how often they'll close these lanes and then there's just nothing happening. Well, I hope my exit's open. That would at least be nice. Okay. Oh, everybody behave. Let's see. Scales are closed. Oh, all right. We can get back over. Well, a lot of dead air on this video. Ran out of thoughts. Just driving. I'm almost there anyways. It's funny, I just passed the truck. It says DJT Transport or something like that. I think that's Trump's initials. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the trucking. But I could be wrong about that being his initials. Not about him being involved in that trucking business. Alright. Here is my exit. Another successful journey. All praise to Jesus Christ. Yeah, I said it. That was crazy, that post that Trump put out. Guy's going off the rails, saying the F word and all praise be to Allah. It's like, what are you doing? You're just sound like a hysterical child. See? It goes back to the emotional control. He made himself look very weak. Oh, that plays in perfectly to what I just read. I didn't even think about that. It made himself look so weak. And now everybody knows how to mess with him. Ugh, it's a good thing he only gets, a couple more years or so left. I hope the next president doesn't lose his shit like that. Excuse me. That was a mistake. As soon as I read it, I was like, oh, you look weak. When I read that, you look like you're throwing a tantrum because you can't play with the ball. Yeah, pretty interesting. See where all that goes, all that ridiculous drama. But supposedly there's some sort of deal over that strait, or some sort of concession made. We'll see. I'm supposed to be like rah, 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 America, but I don't know. In my mind, I'm like, if I was Iran, I just would have been like, screw you. Holding out. Sticking in the guns. It's ridiculous. All of it. How we've gotten this far in humanity, in this experience, and still not figured out how to just work together. It's beyond me. All right. I'm here. Everybody have a great day. Be the master of your emotional reaction. Try to think a little more. Go to work.